Hello, everybody. Welcome to another Comic Boom Comic Source collaboration. It's your DC Spotlight for the week of April 29th, 2026. It's a fifth Wednesday, and as is often the case, publishers will use this as a chance to get caught up on late books. That being said, there's no final issue, but final of the first 6 issues of Hush 2. Supposedly it's going to come out at the end of next month, year and a half late. We'll see. But yeah, a couple of specials. Zatanna #1 is here as well. And Swamp Thing 1989 #1, which we'll talk about that when we get to it. But yeah, just only 4 books this week. But that is also is prefaced by there are a number of comic giveaway day, I think is what the DC associated one is. Some people are still using the thing free comic book day for Saturday in May. Some others free free comic day or comic giveaway day. I don't know. It's a big mess because Diamond actually owned the free comic book day, like the rights to use that name or whatever. So anyway, all that to say, kind of a smaller week. So we'll still rank them 1 to 4, but everything by default is in our top 5. Which of all the weeks to do, like to have this happen, because I was to say I was underwhelmed would be an understatement. I probably only enjoyed 1 book.
Oh wow.
Yeah, and even that one had its issues, but yeah, we'll get to it. It sounded like you enjoyed this week more than I did, Rocco.
I did. I did. I actually thought it was. I thought it was okay. Well, I mean, we'll elaborate more on it, but I did enjoy the next level comics. Zatanna, Jamal Campbell. I'm sure that won't surprise you. I not only love his art. I think he's got a good handle on the character as well. And I was pleasantly surprised with Jeph Loeb with this Batman Wonder Woman crossover, which is sort of like an age-old tale. The Swamp Thing, which a lot of people have been talking about, I was pleasantly surprised by that. And even I'm not a fan of the Galaxy so much, that particular character, but Justice League Intergalactic I thought was much better than I expected. I didn't expect much from Axelrod, but again, there's only 4 comics, but it was. I actually had a little bit of a tough time ranking these, to be honest, which was a pleasant surprise. But we'll get into it. I'm curious to hear your thoughts on them.
Yeah, he maybe had a little bit of a tough time ranking as well. Only one comic can be last, so it's like, which one am I gonna put?
But I want to, before we get ahead, I want to give a shout out. I went to the Calgary Comicon, and I'll just talk about the DC comics that I got signed, because this is the DC this podcast. I got I got the Mitch Gerads Absolute Batman #19 cover signed by Mitch Gerads. Gerads, or I apologize, I always say it wrong, but yeah. Mitch Gerrits. Anyways, awesome. And of course, I got my picture and the selfies with them. And I also got him to sign he also did his Wonder Woman Black and Gold 2026 special. And he thanked me for it because he said that he hasn't signed one of these yet because very few people ever bring him this comic to sign. And so I got that. And then finally, quick, Tate Brombell. He signed a bunch of Batgirl for me, and I love it. And he talked about New Titans. I told him I wasn't a big fan of the New Titans, and he says, "Well," and I said, "I'm not a big fan of spoiler." And he took the challenge. I told him if he can make me a fan of Stephanie as Batgirl in the pages of New Titans, I'll give a shout out to him on the podcast. But I said 2 issues in, it's not happening so far. But in any event, good times had by all at the Calgary Comicon. Hung out with Trevor Linkevich of Rise, and I got more issues from Rise, and check out Kickstarters and stuff, and just a really good time, and good times had by all. And I'm just so fortunate, as I was in San Diego last year with you and Trevor as well, and I'm so fortunate that I often get a free badge to these cons and meet creators, just because of people like you and Trev that I know and are kind to me and give me a lot of heads up and get me into certain areas that I wouldn't normally be able to get into, and I fully take advantage of it. And anyways, really good time, and this industry, I know there's still sometimes there's some negative talk about comics, but man, it just feels, it was a lot of fun, and comic books just are on a high. It just seems to be on a high, and or maybe it's just me, and I'm more positive this year than in past years. But it was a really good time.
I love that you threw down the gauntlet for Tate. He's such a nice guy. I've had the chance to talk to him, before, and yeah, well, I'm not a huge fan of his. I mean, again, I think he nailed the landing on Green Lantern Dark. I'm not a
Yeah.
fan of Stephanie Brown either, uh, but I don't know. That didn't come up. I mean, when I saw him, I was just like, "Hey, you nailed the landing on Green Lantern Dark." I didn't tell him, 6 issues before that underwhelmed or whatever, but
Yeah.
yeah, I love it.
Oh no, he's a great
Yeah,
guy. He's a super guy. I mean, he had a sense of humor about it, and he kind of took on the challenge. And I sung his praises on Batgirl. I thanked him for bringing back the martial arts people that I love and the martial arts characters. And he loves Cassandra Cain, and I told him it showed. And hey, so good stuff.
yeah. I feel like, and again, this is just my speculation, or whatever. The reason you love these books so much, you're off the high of such a great con. Like I saw a lot of social media posts over the weekend of people that were at Fan Expo Calgary,
Yeah,
and I feel like that's one of the bigger shows. And it's interesting. Like Fan Expo has a ton of shows, right? And a lot of them are driven by kind of the non comic book celebrities or what have you, and they see it's interesting because they all have that same title, Fan Expo Dallas or Fan Expo Calgary or Fan Expo New Orleans or whatever it is.
yeah,
But it's interesting how they all have a little bit of a different feel and a different identity. And
yeah.
and Calgary, it seems like a more comic focused Fan Expo con as opposed to others, which are less so.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you
And
this. Like, I went with Steve again, and of course, Steve, he came with me to San Diego. We'll say this about Calgary Expo is that if you're into comics and creators, like we had a really great, I mean, Jimmy Palmiotti was there along with a host. Like, there's a lot of really, Joe Casado was there, and, Charles Soule, Greg Capullo. And there's no lineups there, guys. Like at San Diego, you're waiting in hours for lineups. There's nothing. You wait 30 seconds to 2 minutes. And so for meeting creators, and then you get to talk to them as long as you want. And then even though they might say they charge, a lot of them, everyone said they're going to charge $10 an autograph. A lot of them eventually, they only charged, they give the first 2 or 3 or 4 free, and then you charge $10, and then they'll sneak in a few more. I mean, they were very generous with their time. And that's one of the benefits I've noticed in Calgary when if I was to compare that to San Diego. San Diego is awesome, of course, and it's number one because it's San Diego. But there is something about the smaller cons, and Calgary's one of the bigger ones in Canada. But there's that one-on-one connection with the creators. It's really something in Calgary. They do seem to generate a pretty good atmosphere for fans.
yeah,
Right.
and again, it's interesting because there are other shows that aren't like. Yeah, I mean, you're right. Like San Diego's not a show. Like I'm never packing up all my books to take to San Diego. Hey, this is the show. I'm going to get a bunch of stuff signed, signed
Yeah.
that or whatever. And every show has its own identity or what have you. But yeah, it was just interesting because I saw a lot of creators shouting out, what a fun time it was and what have you. So
Yeah.
yeah, really really interesting. So I kind of on a little bit of a somber note. I am feeling profoundly sad. You might tell my energy's really low. I'm in a way I'm surprised by how affected I am by this because I only ever met him in person a couple times. I saw him a lot of times at various conventions, but I only ever really said hi a couple times after I'd interviewed him, and I certainly don't feel like I knew him the way I know a lot of other creators who I would consider to be friends. But for some reason, the passing of Gerry Conway, we got the news that he passed away today at 73, has really affected me. Like I'm surprised by how saddened I am by the passing of this man. And he had been in poor health, which I had assumed, because he recently, within the last couple months, had a signing. I think it was at a shop in LA, if I'm not mistaken, in the Southern California area, and it was billed as his final public appearance. So privately there were people that knew that he had been dealing with an illness, and I made that assumption based on this information. Now, when I interviewed him, I think it was maybe 2021 or 2022, so it was a few years ago, and I remember thinking at the time. So that was before he was even 70. And I remember thinking at the time that he looked frail. Um, and when I heard he passed away today, I was, very sad about it, but at the same time, not completely surprised because of his health as I perceived it. But then when I saw he was only 73, I was surprised. He seemed much older than that to me. Um, but I think the person that I saw, obviously, this man's a legend. Like, he created so many characters, probably the most well known being the Punisher, Firestorm's another one, Power Girl, another, Firestorm, the Nuclear Man, Miss Marvel. Now, not Carol Danvers, but he's the one that turned Carol Danvers into Miss Marvel. Killer Croc,
Mm-hmm.
Gypsy Vibe, that Detroit era of the
Crazy,
Legion
yeah.
of Superheroes. Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
the list goes on and on and on. But anyway, with all the remembrances that are, coming out about, what a legend, he created Ben Riley, and he was the one that wrote the night Gwen Stacy died and what have you. The sort of little tribute or thoughts that hit me the most was Mark Millar on Twitter. I guess it was just posted. I saw it on Twitter. I don't know if he posted it other places, but he mentioned how he'd given over the control of his social media to some PR person or firm, many years ago. But he purposely was coming back to post this himself. This was coming directly from him, and he talked about the first comic he ever read being a Gerry Conway comic and what have you, and how he was lucky enough to become friends with him later in life and knew he had been in poor health, but this was still a surprise. But the thing that struck me about what Mark had said, once he kind of mentioned a little bit of, yeah, first comic I ever read and got a chance to meet her, whatever, and they became friends, had a lot of meals together. He mentioned the warmth that Gerry Conway had, and just what a genuine person he was. And again, I didn't know him to, had a long conversation with him. You can go look at, just search the comic source Gerry Conway if you want to go listen to that conversation. I would have talked with him longer, but he kind of gave me the high sign that it was time. Again, it's harder for somebody who's in poor health to have such a long conversation. But it's over an hour. Again, because I didn't know if I'd ever get a chance to talk to him again. I always wanted to because there were things that we didn't touch on. But it's a long conversation.
Yeah.
But that word warmth, like when I read what Mark Miller posted, that was the thing that struck me, because he always came across to me as a very warm individual. And I have never heard anybody say anything bad about him ever. I remember a few years ago he came to Phoenix Comicon. That was the same year that Roy Thomas was here, and they were fast friends, and they did a lot of Hollywood writing together and what have you. But I remember it was a panel with just those two guys on the panel just talking to each other, and it was so much fun, and you could tell how the decades long friendship and what have you. I mean, this is a guy that took over the writing of Spider-Man from Stan Lee at the age of 19. He started writing Amazing Spider-Man at 19. What the hell were you doing at 19? It wasn't writing Amazing Spider-Man, I'll guarantee you that.
That's right.
So, I mean, the man was just legendary. And again, the fact I'm so grateful I got a chance to talk to him. I wish I'd had a chance to have him on again. But it's so insightful. The things he talked about in terms of story structure and the illusion of change is, I think, the term that he used when you're talking about writing comic book characters and what have you, which I thought was so interesting. It was a concept that he discussed with Stan Lee, and how you always have to bring a character back to true. And yet I was like, but I didn't say it at the time, but I was thinking in the back of my mind, but you killed Gwen Stacy. There's no coming back to true for Peter. That's all. This is the guy that's a hero because he's guilt ridden, and you just piled another another giant cinder block on top of him.
Yeah.
But anyway, just a tremendous loss, and my condolences go out to his friends and family. I know he has children and what have you, and yeah, I mean, you hear 73, and he started his career young. I think he started writing comics at 16, so he had a good long run or whatever. But I mean, in like nowadays, 73 is not that old. That's 3 years younger than my mother. You know what I mean? And
Mm-hmm.
he's left us already, and it's just very sad. Again, I was surprised by how hard it hit me. So wherever you are, Gerry, I hope you're get some rest. Your poor health is something that's in the past, and you can have some peace. So yeah, just tremendous loss, and I'm sure we'll hear a lot about Gerry in the coming days and weeks. People telling stories and what have you, because by all accounts, he was a very genuine and warm individual, and obviously just a legendary generational talent. Marvel Comics wouldn't DC Comics wouldn't be what they are without the contributions of this man. So
Yeah.
very sad day.
Yeah, it's another example, on the shoulders of giants, right? We have tremendous creative people nowadays that learn from the best, and Gerry Conway was one of them. And yeah, I just found out. I mean, I found out from you about his passing today, just earlier today, and yeah, it's just another legend has left us, and it's just, I'm looking forward to hear to watch all the nostalgia videos that are going to come out, and the tributes, and I gotta, I'll educate myself. I mean, you just rattled off some things that I just frankly forgot. Oh my God, he did that. He did that. Of course he did that. He did that. Wow. And yeah, I think the last thing that we reviewed that he wrote was Spider-Man, Superman, that back in '76, right?
Yeah.
That was the last thing we reviewed of his, and that's iconic as well. And maybe that's perhaps a fitting for us anyway. Fitting that the last Gerry Conway story we reviewed was a Superman Spider-Man crossover, as only Gerry Conway could do it. So it's sad to see, but he's fortunately we got a lot to remember him by.
Yeah, I mean, no doubt. Spider-Man, Superman, obviously, the Superman, Spider-Man, and the Spider-Man, Superman. We just got those crossovers, just got those anthologies. The one from Marvel just came out, which I thought was pretty pretty dismal, honestly. DC one was a bit better a few weeks ago, but neither one of those comes out and has the iconic moments. Even the Marvel one is, as dreadful as I thought it was, it had its moments. Every story for the most part, had at least one moment that was really cool. Those books don't exist without what Gerry and others did, with the first Spider-Man Superman crossover back in the day. So
yeah.
Anyway, let's dive into the books now that we've been chatting for 10 minutes or what have you. I'm honestly not going to have a whole heck of a lot to say about these titles, even though there's only 4 of them. And we are going to kick it off with Swamp Thing 89, number 1. And as Rocky alluded to, this was canceled in 1989. Rick Veitch, I've heard it pronounced so many different ways. I think it's Veitch. Rick Veitch is the writer. Michael Zulli and Vince Locke are credited as illustrators. Trish Mulvihill on colors. John Costanza and Todd Klein on letters. So there is a Swamp Thing number 88. This is Swamp Thing 89 number 1. But when you look at the trade dress, it says 88. Everything about this book is exactly as it would have been had it actually come out as planned in 1989, from the trade dress to the ads inside and all that sort of stuff. Now, basically what happened is, based on the content of the story, DC was Warner Brothers, actually, not DC, because Rick Veitch would have had to get DC editorial approval before this. And this was, early days of Vertigo. And so they knew what it was, but then some of the higher ups at Warner Brothers got wind of this, and they're like, no, you can't do this. I mean, this is Swamp Thing thinking back to his past, when he wasn't Alec Holland at the time, but he still existed as an elemental, and he is at various times experiencing the life of Jesus Christ, Jesus of Nazareth. Times at the Last Supper, his praying at the Garden of Gethsemane, then his crucifixion, what have you. I mean, I've heard certain people, and I looked at the passage, and I don't overtly see it, but maybe it was in the script or whatever. But the actual crucifix that Christ is crucified on is supposedly Swamp Thing himself.
Just so you know, that was the original cover, and I'm showing the original cover on YouTube here for those watching. And the original cover had Swamp Thing being part of the wood, being part of the being part of the cross, and so it was a pretty and Swamp Thing, instead of the face of Jesus, it's the face of Swamp Thing suffering. So you can imagine it's wrinkling some feathers potentially, particularly back in the religious right of the '90s in America.
Yeah, I mean, I'm honestly surprised that editorial approved this in the first place. I'm not at all surprised that when the Warner Brothers execs heard this, they were like, "Oh, hell no!" So Rick Veitch quit the book in protest, and then they had to pivot quickly and complete, because again, this was supposed to be a 4-issue arc, and they pivoted quickly and it went away from and Veitch was off the book and whatever. And I do respect uh, Rick Veitch for I keep saying his name all these different ways. Rick.
Veitch.
Anyway,
I'm going to butcher
Veitch.
it too, so don't worry about
Yeah,
it.
yeah. I don't dislike when I'm not sure. Rick. I'm going to say Veitch. No, I'm going to say Veitch. Rick Veitch. Anyway, um,
You say tomato, I say tomato.
yeah. So Veitch leaving the book, I understand, I respect it, and I sort of again, I point the finger a little bit more at editorial. Why did editorial think this was going to be okay? Nowadays it's whatever. I think relatively tame. I still think Warner Brothers might be a little nervous, but I think it could be. I mean, obviously this has been released, so maybe they're a little nervous about it. Maybe not. Whatever. Maybe they don't care. But I could completely see them in that time period, being 40 years ago, whatever, being much more nervous about it or whatever. And so again, I kind of point the finger more editorial, like, why did you think this was going to be okay? So for Veitch, I understand him getting upset and leaving the book because he was told it was going to be okay and then wasn't. And that's why I push back and say, man, editorial, I think, really did him dirty to make him think that this even possibly could have been printed. Again, I'm not surprised. And this is coming from the perspective I have of being obviously alive at that time and a comic book reader at this time. This would have come out while I was in high school. I went to Catholic school from kindergarten through 8th grade. The only reason I didn't go to Catholic high school is because there wasn't a Catholic high school in my town. I would have had to drive. I would have had to take a bus 40 minutes to the Catholic high school in the next town. And then you can take a bus back, but if you participate in sports, which I did, then my parents would have had to drive to pick me up every day, and it just wasn't tenable. So thank God, no pun intended, that I went to a regular high school instead of a Catholic high school. But I was aware, obviously, of what religion was then, and still is to some extent. But I think there's more tolerance now, or I don't know. Maybe some people would say it's the moral decay of society is why something like this would be allowed now and not then. So I say all that to say, because of my background and my knowledge of Catholicism specifically, this didn't really land for me, very well. I had no context. I wasn't reading Swamp Thing at the time. I'm not a particular Swamp Thing fan. Um, I think it's interesting as an artifact of its time, and the colors, I think, visually are probably the coolest thing. But the other part of this, and again, I don't have the context because I wasn't reading Swamp Thing at the time, but Rocky will agree with me on this since we've both been reading comics for such a long time. It did take longer to read a comic book back then. There was simply more words, more dialogue. And I got into this and I'm like, oh man, has religious overtones, and it's talking about, the history of Christ or whatever, which I know very well from being raised in the Catholic Church. So this wasn't new information for me, but it was a chore. It was a chore, man. It was a slog for me to read. At one point, I turned the page and got to the next page and saw all the dialogue, and I just got up. I just got up from my computer, and I was like, I gotta go for a little lap. I gotta do a lap here around the living room and just be like, gird myself up to read all this dialogue. So yeah, this is not for me, not aimed at me, doesn't connect with me or whatever. I think it's an interesting artifact of its time. I know it had a lot of fans, and so I know that when this was first broached, there was overwhelming fan support to have this come out, and I'm very happy for Rick Veitch that this is coming out as he intended. But and I will read the other 3 issues of this. I think it's 4 issues, but I don't expect that all of a sudden it's going to pivot next issue or the following issue or even the last issue for me to go, oh my God, I love that so much. It's just I'm not the target audience for this in any way, shape, or form. But yeah, interesting. I want to say interesting controversy because to me it's not really a controversy because I I'm not surprised at all that this wasn't allowed to be released. Not one bit. And if somebody had given me this comic and said, "Hey, DC's going to release this," I would have been shocked had it actually happened. So again, I think, yeah, the blame is more on editorial than anyone else. And we could argue whether DC not releasing it is censorship. I think that's the way Veitch looked at it. But I think it was more just a business decision more than anything else. They didn't want the heat, and I can completely understand that. So yeah, not surprising in the slightest. But anyway, what are your thoughts on it, Rocky?
I really enjoyed this. I enjoyed this far more than you did, obviously. I fancy myself. I actually know a little bit about religious history myself. I did take a little bit of religious history in university. I was born and raised Roman Catholic. I consider myself more spiritual now, but I used to be a practicing Roman Catholic. So, but it's not even so much that you don't need to be practicing Catholic to enjoy this. I will say that this story is awesome, and I'm just going to give you why this story is just so cool. Forget about, and I'm not going to comment about whether or not it should have been canceled or not. You talked enough about that. This story takes place really essentially within the years following the Crisis on Infinite Earths, and Swamp Thing is wondering the alternate realities. And by the way, this issue is also about the origins of Etrigan the demon. Which is interesting and would also have been relevant, and it would have affected the history of Etrigan the demon. And essentially, the Swamp Thing finds himself in different parts of world's history, and he's sort of visiting different time periods, and he ends up, of course, in the time of Christ, and witnessing this young spiritual leader essentially sort of rise in the ranks in the minds of people. But Swamp Thing isn't the only person. Swamp Thing, being an avatar of the green, has tremendous respect for Jesus Christ, he's amazed by how much love this person has. But we also have demons that want to destroy this man, because this man, this powerful angel of a man, this Jesus, and a lot of these, I'm using my words to describe it, which may not do it justice, but in any event, the idea that these demons want to destroy Jesus, and in their desire to do so, one of the demons possesses a man by the name of Marcus. And Marcus is somebody who is sleeping with Mary Magdalene. This is another controversial thing back potentially. Mary Magdalene, who of course is a woman of the night, a prostitute, but she loves Jesus. She washed Jesus's feet. Jesus told her that, she's a woman, but she's still accepted. She'll be accepted into heaven. So Marcus is a guard that she's in love with, and Marcus, she tells him that sooner or later Jesus is going to be arrested, and Marcus promises that I'm going to end up being the arresting officer. Don't worry, I'll arrest Jesus, and then I'll let him go. So this Marcus is a good man. Unfortunately for Marcus, he gets possessed by a demon. And the devil hates Jesus because even the devil himself, the story tells us, is too cowardly that even the devil himself would never sacrifice his own son. And so it really sort of hypes up just how great this Jesus is. And one of the very powerful symbolism here is that when Jesus is in the garden he knows he's waiting to be arrested. And as he's waiting to be arrested, Swamp Thing, through the vines, actually fills the Holy Grail, the cup that Jesus drinks from, with basically wine. Swamp Thing sort of fills up the Holy Grail. And so that's a little interesting, because we always thought that the last time Jesus drank from the cup that would become the Holy Grail was at the Last Supper. Well, this suggests that no, Swamp Thing fills the cup up with something, and Jesus then drinks and consumes Swamp Thing. And it fills Swamp Thing with love, and it empowers Swamp Thing. And so it's sort of symbolic. Now, this is my own reading into it as a Swamp Thing fan, sort of like the green is nature, the green is wholesome. Jesus meditates and becomes one with everything, and all there is love. And there's no such thing as fear in Catholic lore and in the mind of the avatar of Jesus Christ. And so it's a very powerful message. And quite frankly, I think that as somebody who I'm not beholden, I'm not attached to a particular interpretation of Roman Catholicism history. I thought it was very powerful. I thought it was a very powerful story. I think it was a very good story. And in the midst of this, Marcus, who's possessed by a demon, of course, is going to go and arrest Jesus. He ends up being exorcised. Jesus forces the demon out of Marcus, saves Marcus's life, but then Jesus ultimately ends up getting crucified, and he dies for the sins of humanity, and ultimately dies for the sins of Swamp Thing and Alec Holland and the plant, the plant that thought he was a man, the Swamp Thing. That's what Alan Moore did, and Alan Moore personally chose his successor after his run on Swamp Thing ended, and he chose Rick Veitch or whatever, and
so bad.
Yeah, but in any event, it's I think the story is very powerful and very uplifting, and it's not done yet. And in the midst of all this, the demon that takes Marcus, who is as this demon before Jesus basically forces the demon out of Marcus, Marcus pukes out the demon known as Etrigan. So it's a really incredible origin for the demon Etrigan, and it definitely would have been interesting. And I actually am second guessing myself, like, geez, you know what? Maybe they should have let this go. This would have been pretty cool. But the guy who, like you, I mean, we lived through the 80s. It would have been, I can understand why they didn't publish it. And by the way, at the end, there's 3 full pages written by Stephen R. Bissett. He gives a very detailed history as to why they, what the story essentially was about. They were fully expecting it to be published right up to the bitter end, and then it was canceled. And it's very informative at the end. We could talk for quite a bit longer on this. I won't. Suffice to say that I think whether you're a Swamp Thing fan or not, I think this story has something to say, and it's worth reading, because certainly from a 21st century perspective, I just consider this a really good mythological tale of Swamp Thing, grounded in love, using the avatar of Jesus Christ to give a good message to the reader that love can conquer all, even following a multiversal crisis like in Crisis on Infinite Earths. That's what I like about it. And it's only part 1 of a 4-part story. And I'm already invested, and I'm curious to see how this would end. And because comic books, when this came out, comic books, the stories were also more consequential in the 80s. Nowadays, we get 4-issue arcs. They're kind of forgettable. I'm really curious to see the next reissues, how consequential this story would have been. And in any event, I thought it was really, really good. And I do recommend that people check this out. And also, it was stated in the end by Mr. Bissett that apparently this might have they're going to republish this. He hinted that they're going to be putting this in trade paperback form inevitably, and he's going to have much more to say in that about the history of this matter. And even if you're not into Swamp Thing, but you're really fascinated with the 80s, the late 80s, early 90s, and the setting of where we were as a culture and why this was canceled, it's very interesting from an historical perspective. So it's very informative.
Yeah, if you're fascinated with the 80s, and my suggestion is go have your head examined. But, I tease. There's a lot of people that are fans of the 80s, but it hits so differently for us, Rocky, having lived through it. The only thing I'll mention, several times you talked about, you said the devil, even the devil wouldn't sacrifice his own son. I specifically want to call out that we're talking about Lucifer, the morning star, the fallen angel, that eventually becomes who people think of as the devil in Catholicism or what have you. But I specifically want to mention that it's Lucifer only because later he has such a big role in kind of the DC universe. I mean, he even got his own TV show, right? That's right. The character that's a character they're talking about. So, all right, let's move on. Up next, we have Justice League Intergalactic. I think it's actually titled Justice League Intergalactic Special number 1. And Rocky mentioned already how it's Jadzia, Axelrod, and Galaxy are Galaxy is a character that was created by Jadzia. She's joined by Nicole Maines as writer on this. Travis Moore handles the art, Tamer Bonvillain on colors, and then Hassan Osman Elhau on letters. I normally really like Travis Moore art. I thought the art here was a little busy, and I thought the color work wasn't it didn't lend itself to making the art pop off the page. I don't know why this wasn't colored in more primary colors. I think if it had been colored in more primary colors, that the art would have landed a little bit better. So I thought the art felt subdued in a way. And when it's this intergalactic battle, I'm expecting more. Um, and then in terms of, hey, what's this doing for these characters? Is it elevating them and what have you? Nicole Maines, I think, is a fantastic writer, extremely talented, and I normally really enjoy her handling of Dreamer. But even in this, Dreamer's coming across, and I can understand why Dreamer's at where she's at in terms of um, after the events of Absolute Power. I can get that. I'm not a fan of Galaxy. I don't find the character to be interesting or what have you. And more so than anything, this does feel like a Galaxy story, and everybody else is just a guest star, whether we're talking about Star Sapphire or Green Arrow, Dreamer, or Adam Strange. I mean, Star Sapphire is front and center on the main cover, but I wouldn't say that this is a Star Sapphire story. But it is interesting in the hands of these two female writers that Star Sapphire, even with Adam Strange and Green Arrow on the team, Star Sapphire is sort of the de facto leader and seems to be calling the shots as if she has the most experience, which is fine. There's nothing inherently wrong with that. The character's actually been around for a long time, but it does, in a way, push back against the narrative that Mark Waid first established when Star Sapphire joined the Justice League Unlimited, and how Carol Ferris was a little bit unsure of herself and was learning the ropes and what have you. So I found that to be a little bit interesting. I didn't find the back and forth with Galaxy and Dreamer to be that interesting. There is a little bit of character development with Dreamer, and I did appreciate that. Um, Even if I wasn't the biggest fan of her being so morose and kind of mopey throughout the majority of the story. But as far as what this is doing for Galaxy, and she has all this anger, and it's exploring her backstory and whatever, I couldn't possibly care less. I don't care about that character. I don't think she's an interesting character visually or personality wise. She's come across as this like bubbly, overly happy alien all the time, and I guess it's interesting enough to add some layers of complexity to find out that she has this simmering anger for what happened to her planet or whatever. But it kind of feels like it comes out of left field, because it's sort of like Jadzia Axelrod created this character. There were a couple of like YA novels, and then she played a big role in the Hawk Girl series that Jadzia wrote. But other than that, we don't really see her show up. And so, I don't say that to say it's Axelrod's fault that her Galaxy's character development feels choppy, because she doesn't show up on a regular basis. Um, but for a character that doesn't show up on a regular basis to have this kind of choppy character development, whether it's the writer's fault or not, that's just the reality of the situation. So again, this just felt a little bit messy. I mean, the story itself is not really that memorable. It perhaps plants the seeds for Dreamer to have a bigger role. I mean, they go to the planet of the
Naltor,
Naltor of
the
the
Dreamers.
Dreamers, yeah, of which Dreamer's mother, Nia, is one of, and they even offer her the role of queen, I guess you'd say, or ask Nia to lead them, and she turns them down or what have you. So there are, again, a few interesting developments, but ultimately, I don't really think that this was something that's going to stick with me, or something that I particularly enjoyed. But I will say, if you like the character Galaxy, if you like the character Dreamer, then this is a must read. If you're a Galaxy fan, you got to pick this up, because even though that the development of that character has been happening in fits and starts, this is another one of the starts, if you will. This is another step on that journey. Uh,
Yeah.
and we do know that there's another story coming that's going to follow on the heels of this in the DC Pride anthology that's coming in June. It says to be continued in Justice League Dream Girls, a DC Pride event. So maybe it's not even in the anthology, the Pride anthology. Maybe it's its own thing. Maybe it's a weekly series in June to celebrate Pride Month. I don't know. Um, but there's a little bit of a preview. We get a few pages, and it's Nicola Scott art, which that immediately is like, I'm not a big fan of Galaxy, but if Nick's drawing it, I'm gonna enjoy it a lot more, and I'll pay a lot more attention.
Yeah.
So yeah, this just, again, much like Swamp Thing, is just not for me. It was fine. Thought the Travis Moore art was fine, but it could have been elevated by I think some brighter color work, and just mostly focused on a character that I don't care about. So a little bit hard for me to get into it. What are your thoughts on it, Rocky?
Yeah, I'm just this is the second one in a row. I feel as you're more on the negative, I'm more on the positive. I love Travis Moore's art. I think it's fantastic. The detail is fantastic. It's clean. It's great. The choreography of the fight scenes is incredible. I think this is Jadzia Axelrod's best comic that she's written, because I've been pretty harsh. I wasn't a big fan of Jadzia Axelrod's when she did. I think she did the Hawk Girl series as well.
Yep, Hawk Girl.
And I just thought she played that a little bit too preachy, quite frankly, on the LGBTQ side of things, and sort of pushing the envelope. I thought it was a very alienating book. I don't think the character justice, and people can disagree with me on that. I'm not trying to I'm not trying to ruffle feathers here. I'm just saying it. Boy, oh boy, do you see a difference here. These are two very LGBTQ characters. It's Dreamer and Jadzia Axelrod. I don't know if I didn't know better, and I might be wrong, but
Hold on a second. You said LGBTQ characters. You said Dreamer and Jadzia. Jadzia is
sorry, and Galaxy. Sorry, thank you.
Yeah.
And one of the things that really stood out here is I thought. What I love about this was that the story was really good. This was grounded in character. Dreamer is wanted on Earth. Amnesty's been granted to all the members of the Justice League, but Dreamer is still technically a wanted war criminal coming out of absolute power. But perhaps she'll grant some amnesty. But Galaxy, who's an honorary member of the Justice League, brought in Dreamer because they're going to Naltar to deal with the Witch Queen, and what I love about it is that we got they're two queer characters, and the only way you know that they're queer is Dreamer makes a comment that is actually funny. She says, "I'm wanted as a woman in 4 countries and wanted as a man in 3 others." I thought that was good. That was saying something. It's subtle. It's funny. It's to the point, and it honestly, look, I got a thick skin. I'm not a particular group of comic readers out there that are all sensitive about. I'm not, but I'm just saying that there's a particular group of readers out there that are snowflakes and can't handle a little bit of differences in characters. That's all I'll say. Suffice to say that this was just focused. I mean, there's no reason why to not love these characters. They're both sarcastic. They got senses of humor. They're good. Even Galaxy. I thought Galaxy was really good. I loved the fact how Jadzia Axelrod and Nicole Maines, they have it that Galaxy, she gives a lot of, she is hopeful, and she's almost a little bit preachy to Dreamer, saying, stand up, come on, you got it. Why are you so negative? Because Dreamer's really feeling down on herself, and so both these characters sort of help each other get out of their rut, and of course Galaxy ends up having some repressed anger issues that come out in the story. And anyways, I thought this worked. I was actually impressed with the storytelling. I thought it was engaging. I'm more inclined to remember this than the other stories I've read with these characters. This is the first time where I've actually enjoyed Galaxy as a character. And ditto for Dreamer. She sort of grew on me with the Suicide Squad series there. And anyways, I thought it was fun. And there's other fun moments with Adam Strange. And of course, there's the Fox, that's the pilot. And Green Arrow as well. There's good character moments here and interactions of the characters and Travis Moore's art. I was very surprised how much I enjoyed this, and easily made my top 4. Yeah. Yeah. Anyhow.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, it's just the rules are usually I'm the one that's more on the positive side, but I don't know. Maybe I'm still mourning the loss of Gerry Conway. All right. Up next we have Batman, Wonder Woman, Truth #1. This is written by Jeph Loeb. We have art by Jim Cheung, J. David Ramos on colors, Richard Starkings and Comic Crafts, Tyler Smith on lettering and design. Uh, at least this is just one issue. It's a one shot, which is great. I'm not sure why Jeph Loeb gets the slowest guys in comics to draw his books. Guys that tend to be named Jim. Jim Cheung is a fabulously talented artist, but he's just slow. I remember being so excited when he got announced as the artist on Scott Snyder's Justice League, and we got, I don't know, what, 4 issues maybe in a year from him. He's just tremendously slow. So, and he doesn't need to be, I will say, because he got his start at CrossGen, and he managed to draw a monthly book back then. But again, he's probably staying up all night and whatever, making a name for himself. And he made a name for himself, and then he didn't have to burn the midnight oil, and I'm all for that. I don't want anybody to risk their health and what have you. But there's something to be said for being young and hungry of staying, on schedule a little bit more. So anyway, I'm glad this is just one story, one issue, and it's one and done, and it's complete, and it's enjoyable. This is the book that I enjoyed the most. So spoilers for what my book of the week will be. But I will also say that Jeph Loeb has never met continuity that he wouldn't disregard for a story. And this story is not, some end all be all, I'm going to remember it forever, it's so good, evergreen kind of story. No, I feel like there was potential there for it to be more interesting than it is. When it first started off, I almost got this little hint that it was going to be a situation where a little bit of a will they, won't they with Bruce Wayne and Wonder Woman, or Batman and Wonder Woman, Bruce Wayne and Diana, which we have at times in the past seen. But instead, he leans into the old trope of Bruce and Selina love each other, blah, blah, blah. The most boring default relationship you can put Batman in, that there's, in my mind, nothing left to be explored there, and just boring. And it ends up becoming a crucial part of the story, actually. With Bruce at the end holding the golden lasso and Wonder Woman asking him the question, do you feel worthy of being loved? Which I felt was the most out of character, just trying to be schmaltzy and make a statement about, like, it just felt completely out of left field. Just in terms of, the story built up to it, don't get me wrong. But, and Wonder Woman even herself, like, oh, I shouldn't have asked him that. Like, it's so just, you don't ask somebody, like, it's out of character for Wonder Woman to do that. It just, I mean, that's so personal to ask somebody that question. Like, and Wonder Woman's supposed to be, a symbol of compassion, whatever. I just thought it was so crass, and I didn't like it at all. But again, like, it's completely out of continuity, ignores everything. Jeph Loeb's just going to tell the story he wants to tell, and continuity and relationships and other things that have happened and haven't happened, whatever, doesn't matter. He's going to just tell the story he wants to tell. And the Jim Cheung art's beautiful. The colors are wonderful, whatever. The story is not anything special. To me, the big selling point for this is the visuals from the cover that's behind Rocky there, that Jim Cheung cover. That's fantastic. And the color work. To me, that's the draw for this book, because again, I don't think the story's that memorable. There's a couple of, I mean, and I will say that Jeph Loeb does seem to have a better handle on Batman's characterization, Batman's voice here. I don't know what the hell happened in Hush 2 that Jeph Loeb doesn't seem to. It's like he forgot what Batman's supposed to sound like and talk like, and his beliefs and whatever. Like, I don't know. But this kind of proves that he does know, so that just makes Hush 2 look that much worse in my mind. But yeah, again, having Harley show up, having the Joker show up, Harley's dialogue is super cringy, trying to give her that Brooklyn accent or whatever. So yeah, there's a lot of things here that I could point and nitpick at. And in a normal week, this probably doesn't make my top 5. And yet here we are based on the fact there's only 4 books. So I think a lot of people are probably going to like this. And again, it's gonna end up as my book of the week. But if on a scale of 1 to 10, I'm probably only giving this like a 6 because like, there's just too many things about it that I don't care for. But I think the art is like a 9. The art is gorgeous. And after I finished reading it and cringed at that Wonder Woman Batman encounter with him holding the lasso, I went back and just flipped back through and just looked at the art and enjoyed that. That was a much better experience than actually reading the thing. So anyway, what did you think, Rocky? Again, probably enjoyed it a lot more than I did.
Well, I actually I can point to this example as I read this and it's funny how Wonder Woman is characterized. It's just it just goes to show. I've said before that Wonder Woman, with the exception of Kelly Thompson's Absolute Wonder Woman, which is an aberration in the history of Wonder Woman consistently, I will always maintain, is consistently the worst written character at DC Comics, and this is just a prime example. This might as well be Wonder Woman of today. Jeph Loeb absolutely is written he's still living in the 90s, but he writes Wonder Woman like she's in the 90s, and you can't tell because Wonder Woman hasn't evolved as a character since the 90s. Hence, she was a joke in the 70s and 80s. She got a little better under Perez, but even that was a hiccup. And then yeah, this was very cliche, very derivative, I always get a kick out how writers don't seem to appreciate how insulting it is to Wonder Woman to think that she walks around with a magic lasso and she's going to ask deeply personal questions of somebody, and as if it's so stupid. Like, it's just so stupid. Like, why would she do that? That's not how you win friends and influence people. But writers continue to do that to this day. But in any event, I could go on a rant about it. I'm not. Quick review. I thought this was kind of fun. I actually enjoyed Harley Quinn and the Joker and Catwoman. Basically, Bruce Wayne has agreed to take care of the magic lasso for reasons which really make no sense, as if Wonder Woman would be stupid enough to part with her magic lasso. But leaving aside the nonsensical nature of the story itself, Bruce Wayne Industries is deciding to care for this magic lasso, and he asks Catwoman to try to steal it to test the security system. Catwoman is successful in stealing it. She steals it. And then Harley Quinn steps in, steals it from Catwoman, and then Joker steps in because he gets it from Harley Quinn, and then Batman and Wonder Woman at the end confront the Joker, and then at the end, throughout it is a dialogue. The framing of the story is at the beginning of the story, Batman and Wonder Woman are talking about each other, and then at the end they're talking about each other, and surprise, surprise, Wonder Woman's filled with love, Batman's filled with fear, because he's at the beginning of his career, and he's got mommy and daddy issues because his parents were killed in front of him. This is the type of story that if you're new to comics or have been living under a rock for 20 years, by all means, pick this up. It's good. The art's fantastic, but this is something I've seen before. I do love the art. It's good. This is a good comic. I'm getting this for no other reason except for I love the Gabriel Dell'Otto art, variant cover. That's my favorite. But the art really is fantastic. And as far as Jeph Loeb's writing here, it's actually less egregious than Hush. And it's actually a fun story. It's a fun story thanks to Harley and Joker showing up. And so I actually think it's possible this could make my top 5 in any other week, because I did have fun with it. But I will admit that I did chuckle at just how little Wonder Woman's evolved as a character in the last 30 years. It's really it's sad. But thank God for Kelly Thompson and Absolute Wonder Woman, who is, I wish other writers would take notes. But
yeah, I mean, is comparing Jeph Loeb's writing to himself, Jeph Loeb's writing on Hush 2, comparing Jeph Loeb to that story, right? That writing, or anyone else to that writing, could there be a lower bar? Could there be a lower bar than the writing on Hush 2? I imagine so. I imagine there's something else out there that's worse, but I can't think of anything currently. Certainly not from the big two. I'm sure there's independent, self-published comics out there that are even worse. But anyway, let's move on. Again, another book that it just feels off to me, in various ways. So anyway, it's Zatanna #1. The next level book, next level #1 that we're going to have. This is from Jamal Campbell. He's writing it, he's drawing it, he's doing the colors, and then we have Ariana Mayer on letters. So this comes on the heels of him having done that 6-issue Zatanna series, and you can certainly tell that he's trying to elevate Zatanna as a character. Talking about having her as the prime magus, I guess the best way to describe that would be the DC Universe's version of a Sorcerer Supreme, right? Like the topmost magic user. So over Marvel, Doctor Strange is known as the Sorcerer Supreme. He's the preeminent magic user in the Marvel universe, and Jamal Campbell wants to establish Zatanna as that in the DCU. Now Jamal Campbell is an incredibly talented artist, but to me, this art isn't quite up to his regular standards. Um, he's like 80-90% of what he usually gives us, but don't get me wrong, 80 to 90% of Jamal Campbell is usually better than everybody else. I mean, the
Yeah.
guy is incredible,
Yeah.
but they're just things that I find myself looking at that pulled me out of the story here and there. Where, but it also might just be the press copy that we got. The scans might, because man, it was the scans were not good on this. So maybe in the final print comic,
Yeah.
those little things that looked off won't look as bad as they did in the scans that we got. Um, the other part of the thing that I'll be a little critical of is just the overall feel of the book. Like I said, it's clear that Jamal Campbell is trying to position and trying to elevate Zatanna, um, but that it's so overt in a way, and I don't want to go so far as to say it doesn't feel earned, because I think Zatanna is probably the preeminent, and if not, I think she has a big enough fan base that most DC fans would prefer her to be the preeminent magic user in the DCU. But I would prefer if it felt like we got there in story and we were shown how she got there rather than just being told, okay, she is the preeminent and she's on this pathway to become the greatest magic user in the DCU. So I don't even know if I can quite put my finger on what exactly it was that felt off. I spent some time thinking about it, but there's just something here that's not quite clicking for me. Now, Jamal Campbell made his name as an artist. He's not normally a writer, and he hasn't written a ton of stuff. So this could just be growing pains as a writer. And so hopefully, as he goes along, he's going to improve his writing skills, and it'll feel, a little more organic. It'll feel like it flows a little more, because there's a stiffness to the story in a lot of ways. And where it really stood out for me is when we get to the last two pages, and there are these dialogue boxes that sort of, I guess, foreshadow or give some hints about what's coming next. And the dialogue, or the language in those boxes, is just so formal in a way, but not like flowery formal in a way where you take it, kind of like this old type magical language that I just didn't think that it was good writing. And when I got to the end of it, it really stood out for me, and it sort of crystallized what I was feeling about the comic all along, how something just felt off. So I want to really like this. And again, I think for the most part, the art is gorgeous, and I really appreciate what Jamal Campbell's trying to do in elevating Zatanna, but it's not quite there. It's not quite there. Not for lack of trying, but yeah, this comic, it just let me down a little bit on a technical level. So anyway, what are your thoughts on it, Rocky?
Yeah, well, I guess 4 for 4. I had fun with this, but I do have. Apparently, I have a Jamal Campbell bias, because I loved his run. I love his sex. I just love the way he draws Zatanna, because I'm a Purian fanboy, and boy, he draws a sexy Zatanna. I just love her. And it's funny how you mentioned sort of like maybe you weren't quite certain what didn't like maybe rivet with you a little bit or register with you. I actually didn't mind the narration itself. It feels like it's like it's being narrated, and that final page was a hint of things to come. So I think what Jamal Campbell was trying to do, and it worked for me, was he's getting me excited for future issues. I mean, if the narration could talk, it's a cunning puppeteer who willfully dances between ally and adversary, the prelude to war cultivated in the flames of broken histories, past failures Returning to haunt and slaughter, a venomous shadow that sleeps in 100 shallow peace. We eagerly await your next performance, Prime Magus Zatanna Zatara. As if, now who's narrating that? Well, it's almost like I'm watching an old TV serial, and this is ending on a cliffhanger. And so I think that was maybe the style he was going for. I think that's how it played out in my head as I was reading it. That's what I sort of visualized. And in any event, I like that it established Zatanna as being the Prime Magus right up front. In this opening issue, I think Jamal Campbell is giving us a reason to stay on board, and he's hoping we do, because this is Prime Magus. She's Prime Magus. He doesn't want to use the word Sorcerer Supreme because, the Distinguished Competition has that. So this is the Prime Magus. It's Zatanna, and she's also, there's Agent Domains that we meet. We have the agency of the occult affairs. So another agency in the DC universe that deals with occult affairs and dealing with Zatanna, and they want to work with Zatanna. And I thought that was pretty good. I'm not really sure who this Agent Domains is, but he does show up, and he looks particularly interesting. He's got a name that's unpronounceable, Special Agent, and they cross it out, Chief of Occult Affairs at the Department of Extranormal Operations. And yeah, so he's got, I don't know why he can't say his name out loud, but it's interesting. He's got an interesting mask, and I'm sure he's got an interesting history as well. So, we've always had, whether it's your favorite character of Amanda Waller with the Suicide Squad, or Director Bones of Argus or whatever, we now have this Ancient Domains of the Occult Affairs. So we got some new characters here. We got Zatanna more overtly elevated to a magical higher status. And so now I'm hoping that what you're talking about is, because I did feel we got here so soon. I was maybe hoping for a little bit of build up, but I don't mind him establishing it up front. Now we can get into the story. Now let's flush out the substance to the story a little bit. A lot of nice icing on the cake here. Now let's get more into the substance. What's the plot going to be? What is she fighting? Who's going to be the main villain? I'm really interested, because I'm quite certain in the DC universe, there's lots of people that would happily try to dethrone Zatanna from being the Prime Magus. And in any event, I thought this was well done. And this is probably, if of all the next level books, I would put this. I actually enjoyed this more than I enjoyed Firestorm, to be honest. But maybe it's just because I like the way he draws Zatanna.
Yeah, again, I in no way am I disparaging his art. I love the way he draws Zatanna too, but that's only half the book.
Yeah.
There has to be a good story there. That has, and I don't deny that he's in terms of art for Next Level, this is the most beautiful of the Next Level book. This is the Next Level book that has the best art, and it's not close. It's not close. But I'm not going to give this by default, hey, this is the best because I like the way he draws Zatanna because she's sexy or whatever. Is it great to see? Yeah, it's wonderful. But you got to have both parts in my mind.
I even like Jorge Corona. I like his cover art. I think that's his favorite. Jorge Corona drew a cover for all the Next Level books, but I think his Zatanna one is my favorite. I even with those ink blots. Which I know you're not a fan of.
Yeah, and the other books didn't really have any great variant covers to speak of. But every one of these, the Cheung Eom variant, the Adam Hughes variant, the Jorge Corona one is arguably my least favorite of the three. But it's still it's still decent. Whatever, would be better without that ink splatter, I think. But anyway. So that does it, everybody. That's the 4 books. Not a ton of books this week, as we mentioned. There are a number of collections this week, however. Absolute Batman Volume 1 is getting a Jim Lee Free Comic Book Day edition. We also have the Chip Zdarsky Batman run is getting a hardcover omnibus. Justice League Unlimited Volume 2 trade paperback, Omega Act. The Absolute Wonder Woman Volume 1 is getting a Free Comic Book Day hardcover, as is the Absolute Superman Volume 1, Last Dust of Krypton, getting a Free Comic Book Day hardcover edition. So I give DC a lot of credit for doing this. You're going to have people that are showing up for Free Comic Book Day or Comic Giveaway Day or whatever you want to call it at their shop. They're going to have an opportunity to pick up the first volume in hardcover of Absolute Batman, Absolute Wonder Woman, or Absolute Superman, because they've heard, I've heard, the buzz about this. Let me go ahead and pick it up. So kudos to them. That's a smart move. Also, Teen Titans by Jeph Johns is getting a compendium. That's late 90s, early 2000 classic Teen Titans stuff. It's 1,326 pages for $60. So again, soft cover, but if you are a fan of Jeph Johns or a fan of the Titans, you may want to look to pick that up. Justice League versus Godzilla versus Kong. That's the Christian Duce drawn, Brian Buccellato written crossover between Kong and Godzilla and Justice League. That hardcover collects all the editions. DC's Finest, which is the format that they use to tell some of the seminal stories of characters, is getting a Joker version this week. 552 pages, $40. Collects, stuff like the Joker fish story and, Death in the Family, all that sort of stuff. Just classic Joker stories. We also have Batman, the Brave and the Bold, Tomorrow's Heroes, getting a trade paperback. That's the collection for the final issues of that Batman, Brave and the Bold anthology series that was coming out a few years ago. And then finally, the Omega Man by Tom King is getting a deluxe edition hardcover. That thing did not sell very well at the time. I think it only ended up lasting like 8 issues or something like that, or 12 issues. But it sort of has a cult following, and a lot of people really, really enjoy it. So this collects the whole thing, all 12 issues, 304 pages for $50. All right, so on to the rankings. Again, this will be pretty simple since there's only 4 books. Everything by default is in the top 5. So I have at number 4, and again, I really question whether any of these would have made my top 5 in a normal week, but be that as it may, at number 4, I have Justice League Intergalactic Special. At number 3, I have Swamp Thing 1989, number 1. Number 2, at number 2, I have Zatanna, number 1, and then at number 1, I'm not going to call it my book of the week. I'll just say it's ranked number 1. It's the Batman Wonder Woman Truth, number 1.
Okay, yeah. Well, my top 4, I put number 4 Justice League International, or Justice League Intergalactic Special, whatever. Coming in at number 3, the Batman Wonder Woman Truth, and number 2 I put Zatanna, and number 1 for me was Swamp Thing. I thought it was really good. I'm really curious to see. I'm really curious to see how it ends, because it's just the beginning, and so I'm definitely in, and I just, I love the trip down memory lane too, reading the history of it, and so I thought it was quite good, and this Swamp Thing could have made my top 5 in any other week potentially. I do believe.
Yeah, fair enough. All right, well, that's going to do it, everybody. A bit of a shorter episode this time. Appreciate everybody joining as always. Don't forget, head over to the Comic Source YouTube channel for all the other content, Spawn Daily and other independent reviews and Marvel books and what have you. There are some other books coming out this week that I'm going to be reviewing, specifically a couple of Bad Idea books that I'm really excited about. So head over there to check those out. We appreciate you joining as always, everybody, and we'll talk to you next time.
Catch you later.